Today on Bearly Homesteading, we're going to be turning this into this. All right, good morning. So this weekend we're going to be processing some of our meat birds, and wanted to show you how we do that here on the homestead. And after we're done processing all of them, we're going to tell you how much meat we got and compare that to the price it would have been to buy them at the store, and see if we actually came out ahead or if this is just another very expensive hobby. So we are here in the morning, a little bit cooler, and we've got our table set up. Okay, so we've got our table set up. The first thing is you want to make sure that you've got a table that you can keep clean. This is an old wooden table that we have, so we've put a tarp over the top of it so we can keep it washed down. The other thing is, because you're going to be working a lot with your hands, we've raised this table up. Brother Bear, you want to come over and stand by the table so they can see? We've raised this table up so it's more at a convenient height for what we're doing. At one end of the table, we have our restraining cone. This is where we're going to put the chicken in when we dispatch it and let it bleed out. It then comes over to the dirty station, where we will remove the feet and the tail and skin it. All of those things go into the 5-gallon bucket to end up in the compost. After it's been skinned, it'll come over to the clean station, where it will get gutted. And then after it has been gutted, it will come over into the first cooler, which has cool water in it to start to get the temperature down. After it's been sitting in the cool water for a little while, it'll move to the final cooler, which has ice in it to bring the temperature down even further. Putting that much weight into the freezer all at once without pre-cooling it is going to put a big tax on the freezer, and could burn out the motor if we do it too much. So we want to pre-cool them so that it's not so draining on our freezer. Now the ice that we do, you could go buy ice at the store, but that's expensive. And so what we do is we take our bread pans, fill them with water, and stick them in the freezer overnight. And so we get nice blocks of water, or blocks of ice I should say, for cooling off the chickens. I'm going to go ahead and put that ice block in the cooler. Now, some of the things that we're going to be using today is, first off, we've got a hose. That hose will give us clean running water, and that running water will help keep everything washed off, wash the feathers and the dirt away. And we do that so that we, of course, stay safe. We want to make sure that we process these chickens in a safe manner so that we don't get sick. Now, this table, the way we have it set up, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it actually tilts a little bit to the back. And we do that so that as we've got this water running, the water isn't running and getting us wet as we're working, but it runs back off, and so it keeps us a little bit drier during the day and still gives us a nice way to get the chicken material away. We are going to be wearing gloves while we're doing this. We've got some kitchen shears, which will come in handy as we're skinning. And then we've got a good set of knives, very sharp, specifically for processing meat. And so that is our setup. Okay. Now, I will warn you that the next part of this video, we are actually going to process a chicken. We're not going to show you it bleeding out or anything like that. I don't believe in violence and gore and celebrating that. It is a necessary part of this process of processing the chickens, but it's not the part that I relish. So We're not going to show you that, but we are going to show you processing the chicken, skinning it and gutting it, and getting it ready to go into the freezer. So for those of you who are a little squeamish and don't want to see that, you're going to want to pause or fast forward through this next part. We'll have a black screen before we start the processing so you know when to stop, and then we'll have another black screen when we're done processing and we're ready to put them in the freezer and talk about the results of this experiment. So we'll see you then. All right, so we've got this one dispatched, and so we're going to go ahead and get him skinned. First thing that we're going to do is remove the feet, and so to do that, find the joint right there. Okay, back up a little bit. Find the joint, and just cut right through the joint. Okay, next are the wings. Now, a lot of people will cut at this first joint of the wing. We don't really eat the wings that much, and so we are actually going to cut down at this second joint. All right, so a lot of people, as I said, will cut at that first joint. We find that because we're going to skin the birds, not pluck them, cutting at the second joint speeds up the skinning process. Okay, next we're going to remove the tail. All right. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the craw. This is where the chicken will store some of its grain before going into the stomach. And we don't want that partially digested grain to get all over the meat. And so we're going to get in there and remove that organ before we skin it. And there it is right there. Now we want to be a little careful at this part because we don't want to cut that open. And it looks like his is fairly empty. That's good. So we actually took their food away last night so that their system could clean out a little bit, make it easier to process. All right, now that we have the craw removed, we're going to skin this guy. And we skin our birds because no one in our family likes eating the skin, and so it's just a much easier process to skin them rather than pluck them. I always start at the top, at the front, where the neck is, and work my way to the back. And once you kind of have somewhere to purchase, for the most part, you can just pull this skin right off. And a helper to hold on to it can be a big assistance in the skinning process. Now, for the most part, you don't have to worry about damaging the bird. You can, for the most part, just grab on and start pulling. But our birds are a little bit older because of the breed and because of some other things that were going on with our lives. We didn't process these quite when they probably should have been, and so they're a little tougher. All right, so now we got it skinned, and so we're going to turn the water on and wash this off. We want to get all the feathers off before we move to the clean station. All right, now that this guy is skinned and we got everything removed, we're ready to move over to the clean station. And got him. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the neck. Now the neck is one of the harder parts of the chicken to remove. I find that if you kind of cut a V like that, and then from the top, find as best you can between a joint of the neck and just start cutting down through. All right, now the neck, the heart, the liver, and the gizzards you can save if you want to make stock. We actually have quite a bit of stock right now, and so we're probably just going to save the heart and the liver, not the lizards. Okay, now while we're up here at the neck region, you want to cut free everything here because we're going to pull it through the back end. And so just kind of loosen everything up so that it'll cut free. Now on the back end, turn it so the breast is up. Okay, find the end of the back, and you want to make a cut right here to open up the abdominal cavity. Now, you want to be really careful because you don't want to cut into any of these organs, especially the intestines, because that will contaminate the entire bird. Once you have the abdominal cavity opened up, you want to find the rectum, and we want to cut to the side on this abdominal cavity and cut around the rectum. Being very, very careful. Like I said, you do not want to cut into the intestines. Okay, now once you have the rectum cut out, you basically want to take it, turn it rectum down, and use the wings as purchase, and then you want to slide your hand up into that abdominal cavity and just start gently pulling anything that squishes down. Now when you're cutting the liver free, you want to make sure that you don't puncture the gallbladder. And so leaving part of the liver there so that you don't puncture it is your best. Okay, that's why you don't want to puncture it. All right, so one chicken processed. This will go into the first cooler, cool off for a little bit, and then we'll put it in the second cooler later. Really careful. Okay, now we're going to wash off everything really well and get ready for the next chicken. Leave it in there until... So one of the things we learned as we were processing them is the neck can be quite a challenge to get off. And so what works better is if you cut around the neck, completely around, get all of the meat and the tendons cut. And then just give it a twist. And if it doesn't twist off, it's because you don't have all the tendons cut. There we go. And that works a lot better cutting the neck off. All right, we've processed the chickens, so now we need to prepare them to go into the freezer. And so we've got the chickens down here in the cooler, we've got our vacuum sealer, and we're going to weigh all of them and record how much meat we were able to get. So first thing, we're going to grab one of the chickens. Go ahead. We want to, we need to let it drip. Get as much of the water out as possible because the vacuum sealer is going to work better if we have, don't touch. Okay, now put it in the colander and we're going to set this aside and let it drip into the bowl.
The next thing we do is prepare our vacuum seal bag. Now we have a Food Saver. Any Food Saver or any product that does the same thing as a Food Saver is a real blessing as you're trying to prepare all this meat to freeze. It just preserves it a lot better and makes it taste better if it's well preserved. So we just make our bag. Okay. You want to put it in?
Now we're doing whole chickens. And so we want to make sure that the bag is fairly long so that we have plenty of room once we put the chicken in. So we've got a portion of the bag that will sit nice and flat and straight within the vacuum sealer.
All right, so then we bring in our chicken. Engineer Bear is patting it dry after it dripped in the bowl. He pats it dry with a paper towel to make sure it's really dry.
Legs down. Okay, we have found that if you put the legs down in the bag, it works better.
Otherwise, the legs were just kind of flopping all over and kept poking into this and causing it problems trying to seal. Also, making sure you've got a big bag with lots of room at the top helps get a better seal also. You may think you're wasting bag, but you're not. You'll waste more bags if they don't seal and you have to cut a second bag. And we also found that if you just dry at the top just a little bit, so there's no moisture right at the top, we sometimes get a better, faster seal. Dump what's in there into the sink before we get another one.
Wait, he needs to see
Yeah, I
it.
know.
I'm telling her.
Just a minute, Margaret. All right, now we have a nice sealed bag.
And so let's weigh this one.
then we record it. We've got here our garden notebook. It's just a 3-ring binder. I've got pages for notes at the beginning. Okay. And then I have pages for each of our vegetables or for our chicken, so we can record how many pounds, what day we harvest, what day we plant, so that year to year we get a good overview of what's growing well and what's not, and when the season, when we can plant and when we can't plant, and how long it takes until they harvest. So we're going to write down the weight of that chicken.
All right. She touched the
All right.
raw chicken. She needs her hands washed.
I'm in the bag.
Okay, just a minute.
So, how long do we need in the bag?
Okay.
And we are trying to be very sanitary and clean to make sure that our family does not get sick.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the rest of the chickens ready for the freezer. And once they're all done, we will let you know how much meat we were able to harvest this year from our meat chickens. So we'll talk to you soon. So let's talk about some results. So far we have processed 22 out of the 26 roosters, and you can see the weights of each of them in pounds and ounces there, which gives us a total of 54 pounds, 180 ounces, just about. And when you convert those ounces into pounds, you get a total weight of just over 65 pounds. And so we have averaged just under 3 pounds a bird, which is fairly typical. Now, that weight is just for the actual fryers. We did get some giblets that we saved as just over a pound's worth, and so this weight does not include that. And had we saved giblets from all of the birds and counted that in the weight, that weight would obviously go up. It probably would be about an additional 3 pounds. So just be aware that that is the weight for just the fryers. Now when we look at that versus the price of chicken in the store, regular chicken that we would normally buy is $1.69 a pound, and organic free-range chicken is about $3 a pound. And I give you both of those prices because we would normally buy just the regular chicken, but the way we've raised our chickens, they are organic free-range, no added hormones or any of that. And so I give you both of those prices for the comparison. And so if we were to take the total weight that we harvested and multiply it by those prices, if we would have bought that at the store at the regular chicken price, it'd be about $110, and at the organic chicken price, it'd be just under $200. We ended up spending $50 to purchase the birds, so that was the cost of buying the birds and having them shipped to us. And we estimate the feed that we gave the birds at about $234 total, which gives us a total cost of about $284. Now we've only processed 22 out of 26 birds, which is 85% of the birds. And so if you take that total cost and prorate it, it's about $240 that it costs to raise those 22 birds, which means we had a net negative on the regular chicken price of about $130 and a net negative for the organic chicken price of about $45. So 3 things that we've learned from processing the birds this year. First thing is that we need to be prompt in processing the birds. When they are at their weight, we need to process them right away. And this year we had some things that came up that prevented us from doing that when we had originally planned. And so we were about a month and a half behind when we wanted to originally process them. And that's just extra feed with no real extra growth in the chickens themselves, and so need to be prompt. Second thing is that if we had saved more of the giblets and the necks, we would have been able to get a little bit more meat, use that to produce, broth and stock, and that would have offset a little bit more of the cost of the birds and made it a little bit more or a little bit less non-profitable. And then the third thing is that our initial cost of buying and shipping the birds was significant. If we had not had that cost when using the organic price for the birds, we would have broken about even. And so next year we're going to be looking into trying to raise some of our own chicks that have been bred here on the homestead to get that initial cost down. And then the last thing is that the variety of the birds that we had were Orpingtons and Leghorns, and both of those varieties are not specifically meat birds. And so they grow quite a bit slower than those breeds that have been bred specifically for meat. And again, that's additional time that we have to feed them to get them up to a proper weight. Now, we did that on purpose because we were concerned about, at our altitude, 8,000 feet, that the fast-growing meat birds would have health problems and wouldn't necessarily make it until they reached their full processing weight. And so we specifically went with the birds we did to prevent that. Now that we've learned some things, we think that next year we may actually try some birds specifically bred for meat and see how they do at this altitude. And that again will reduce the amount of feed time and will get us to processing weight faster. So while this year you might say that it was mainly a very expensive hobby in raising these birds, we learned a lot, and the knowledge that we've gained this year as we go forward and do this again, and we are going to do it again, is well worth the investment that we made this year. We're going to do things differently and get the cost down so that we can make this process of raising our own chickens worthwhile and actually be a positive financially for us. So with that, we will let you know how it goes next year. And this is Lumberjack with Bearly Homesteading saying use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.